Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. We return. It is Ben and I, and we'll be joined shortly by Milton for Outer Rim Transmission, episode 173. I went to New York Comic Con, then it was a Halloween weekend, so we took a little bit of a brief hiatus, but we are back and better than ever because we are on the verge of a brand new Star Wars series releasing. So we're going to dive into a brand new trailer for Star Wars Skeleton Crew, given our trademark breakdown as we often do here on the podcast, frame by frame. Plus there's some really cool comic news and more. So Ben, it's been a while, so I just kind of want to catch up on what we've been doing. I was at a convention, but what have you been up to, man?
Yeah, I mean, over here it's been pretty much like the normal stuff this time of year. It's pretty routine at this point. You know, it's like football, working out, consuming different Star Wars pieces of content, whether it be like old stuff, new stuff, whatever, anywhere in between. So, you know, just pretty much like the norm, really, I would say. So that's kind of what I've been up to. Had a big cookout yesterday at our family's for the fall, which was nice and a lot of fun. And then, yeah, I mean, just getting ready to talk Skeleton Crew, getting excited about the new show coming out, which will be a lot of fun. And, you know, the marketing cycle is already starting to amp up for that, which is honestly a week earlier than what I was even thinking it would be. So that's a nice surprise. But yeah, that's kind of what I've been up to lately, really. And it's just been really cool. And like the only like actually out of the ordinary kind of weekend Star Wars the past couple weeks I've had was I've seen some like Star Wars actors cross over into other media. So the chick who plays Asajj Ventress in Clone Wars and like the 3D Clone Wars, she actually was playing in the Batman animated cartoon, like the classic one, actually back in the day. She was in there as Catwoman, I believe, because I seen like a little clip on Instagram when I was scrolling through, and I was like, what the heck? Like I was just scrolling through and I doubled back and I was like, wait a second, that was Asajj. And all the comments in it were like, oh my gosh, Asajj Ventress, like this is where she was starting, and she was like in a Batman show.
That is crazy. Yeah, there's so many famous voice actors that have these gigs, especially from Star Wars, because they got all the big guns for Star Wars. When it came to the Clone Wars, they got the top talent in voice acting. Even at Comic-Con, I was walking through the convention, and there was Ahsoka Tano herself, just out on the floor. She had her own little booth out where like the vendors are, which is separate from where the usual celebrities with autographs are and all that sort of thing. That was cool. I turned over to Matthew, my co-host on Tractor. I was like, dude, we're standing next to Ahsoka Tano. This is crazy, man. And then there was Tara Strong, who is the voice of, I believe, Harley Quinn from the animated series as well for Batman. So, and Hondo Ohnaka, dude, the voice actor, it was all these animated people. Oh gosh, do you remember what his name is?
Oh, I can't remember what his name is. I unfortunately can't. He has.
I will.
Yeah, continue.
I will find out in a minute.
Well, it's cool seeing you know, those actors out and about like that, and like, you know, whether it be in person in your case or like in my case, just scrolling through Instagram and seeing like little clips from different shows and stuff, and you're like, what in the world? So you know, it's always fun seeing those crossovers when it comes to Star Wars, like crossing over into other media and you know, other platforms, really.
Jim Cummings. How could I forget the mighty Jim Cummings, voice of Winnie the Pooh himself? So, and he's got a very distinctive voice, because I was playing World of Warcraft a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden I heard his voice of a different character, and I knew right away that was Jim Cummings. He's got that trademark voice, really good pirate voice, obviously, among other things. So, yeah, that's great. I mean, I don't want to recite all my adventures here at New York Comic Con, because me and Matthew did like several podcasts through the Star Wars Underworld's YouTube. You can check it out through my own YouTube here. I have like a 45-minute video. Most of it is us talking at the end, but there is really cool footage of the convention itself. But hey, it was a good time. We had a couple Star Wars panels, a lot of cool cosplay. play a lot of good DC stuff more than anything else, which I really enjoyed. Video game stuff, all the whole shebang. So it was good to be back, and it's good to be back on here tonight. So we're gonna get into a bunch of cool stuff, but first, I'm going to do a little bit of a show and tell. And tell anybody this what we were going to do, but I'm throwing this as an audible. This week was the pre-release for the brand new Star Wars Unlimited set for the Twilight of the Republic. And this is the Clone Wars specific cards for this game. So I got a couple packs here. I'm going to pick one up, and I'm going to just open them up live here on the cam. I will do my best to describe it for the audio listeners out there. I just picked this at random, and that's perfect because I was hoping I would pick this one. There's 3 different designs on the packs, and we're starting off. We're gonna go with the Commander Cody. So I think there's like 16 or 15 cards per pack. The first card that you see will always be a lead. Oh, this is great. I know you guys are gonna appreciate this one. This is the leader of the man himself, Quinlan frickin' Voss.
Oh, nice! That's awesome.
Yeah.
Dang, that's really cool.
This is a cool leader, right? And your second card is always going to be some kind of base. So this is the. Well, I can't really say that. Oh, Onderon. Yeah, this is where Saul Guerrera and his sister were, right? We have a heavy pursuer tank. This is going to be very nostalgic for a lot of viewers and listeners right now. This is the snail tank from Revenge of the Sith. And oh my gosh, this is a card from a vehicle from Attack of the Clones. This is the vehicle, the Falchion tank, which basically takes down the core ships as they're trying to evacuate Geonosis. Oh, and speaking of Geonosis, this is why I just love opening these packs, because it's so nostalgic for me. You got a spider droid from Geonosis. How cool is that? Oh,
that is really neat.
Yes, and then we have a jet trooper of the 501st.
Oh, nice.
Now this is a card that was recycled for this set. They do that sometimes from other previous. The Vanquish. This is a card from set 2, I think. It's just a card where you could just basically destroy somebody instantly, as long as they're not a leader. Sorry. Oh, one of my favorite designs in the Clone Wars. The ARC Trooper, the Advanced Recon Commando, which I just learned the full title like a couple weeks ago when I picked up the Secrets of the Clone Troopers book, which you could actually check out my review from on the channel right now. But they spelled it out, that like the acronym. I never knew what the acronym meant until like a couple weeks ago. This is a separate as heavy pack, and as I said, this is not really prequels, but it's more specifically Clone Wars. And this is definitely something you won't see on the live action screen. This is from the Bad Batch arc. It's also from the movie. I think this is probably from Kostafis because the blue hue in the background. Oh, this is.
Oh yeah, probably.
Now what I'm about to show you now is a vehicle that's prominently in Attack of the Clones, but somehow never made it to a second of screen time in the Clone Wars, and that is the Hellfire droid, or the Hellfire tank, whatever you want to call it. In this case, they call it, Hellfire tank. I don't get it, man.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites in that movie, and then even in the old Battlefront games, that was one of my favorite vehicles to use in those games too.
I didn't realize, or I didn't remember that was actually part of the game.
Yep, that's
awesome.
On the Geonosis level, actually. Yeah. Dang.
It's vehicle heavy, man. Another vehicle, another one which I love. It's probably just because it's all Clone Wars. I just love Clone Wars. But V-Wings. Now, they had a V-Wing for the Imperials in the first set of the game. This is a Hotshot V-Wing, to be specific. This is great. When I seen this card, I've opened up a couple packs already, and I did not realize that Fantasy Flight Games was going to go into the deep cut territory here. But we have another Hutt, ladies and gentlemen. We have Zero the Hutt is in this freaking game. I mean, come on. Whoever's involved, all the people involved at Fantasy Flight Games did their freaking homework. They did their homework.
That would have not been on my bingo card.
One that's even more of a deep cut. Tell me what this guy is from. I know, but I want to know if you know. Obi Civic. Wait. OC Cybic. Does that ring a bell? Does that look familiar? I can't even tell you what species it is because I don't even know the species name. OC Sobek. He's a separatist.
Is that the guy? Is that the guy from the Kenobi show that's doing all the fake Jedi stuff? I don't remember.
No, this is clearly an alien.
Oh, I didn't remember. I don't know.
It's the guy that was in the Citadel arc. I believe he was like the warden of the scene where the one where Echo dies or quote dies, not really, and then you have Tarkin being rescued. Like I think he is the warden of the facility.
Oh, nice.
Oh, I feel like I gotta sneeze. All right, I don't think that was able to get on the cam. That's good. Now this is another deep cut, but I'm happy I pulled one of these for the stream because this shows you how great the design work for this game is for Fantasy Flight games. This is a character called Rune Haka. He was from the Phantom Menace. He's one of the delegates for the Trade Federation. But if you're watching this at home, it's actually a borderless card. You can see a lot more of the artwork. It's not blocked off. This is what they call hyperspace variant. Sometimes they're actually foil or holographic too, which makes them even more rare. But yeah, that was that one. This one's pretty cool. Oh my gosh, I just pulled the legendary. I just pulled a legendary on stream, guys. This is awesome. So I'm actually inspecting this card for a moment because I'm like, oh, what's this gonna do? Exploit 3, ready up to 3 units. Each of those units gets +1 and gains overwhelm. Oh my goodness. Planetary invasion. This is basically a card that'll let you get your army, your battle droids up and running very quickly. That is so cool that I just pulled a legendary on the stream. And I have one last one. Oh, this one is really cool. I talk about the artwork and what they pull from deep cuts. This one's called Caught in the Crossfire. I'm not going to go over the rules or anything like that. We're just looking at the art. And that's what I mean. This is the foil. The foil, I don't know if you can even make out what's exactly happening in this. But, I mean, look at that sheen. Just like the lighting of that is so cool. Mm-hmm. But this is basically, I think, from Utapau. Because if you look at the card's rules, it's basically like you might kill your own guy or choose 2 enemy units. No, choose 2 enemy units in the... like, choose your opponent's units and they attack each other and kill each other, basically. Just like in the Utapau arc when Pong Krell's like, oh, you're going to attack these coordinates, and then they take off their helmets and they're like, they're us. It's like, no. Yeah. So that's a really cool card. So, hey, for a pack that opened up on stream, we had a lot of vehicles for the Separatists. We even pulled a legendary Separatist card. I think that was a success. There's a lot more where that's coming. I'm going to be doing an entire box opening of like 24 packs next weekend. I believe I'm going to try to do that for Saturday. So stay tuned to everything because I will I'll promote that at least a couple hours beforehand if I can. Because I did it last time and I had my buddy all the way from overseas, Dan Grievous, who happens to be the biggest like Separatist fan on the planet, and he watched me open up box 2, which is Shadows of the Galaxy, which is all the bounty hunters. I told him, I said, dude, I got an entire box of droids and Separatists. So he's probably gonna do his best, I would imagine, to tune in, even if he has to do it after the fact. But yeah, there you go. You're gonna get 2 different live streams coming from Star Raptor next week. Our show will continue out of transmission. Plus, I'll be doing the live unboxing. So if you like that little preview of those packs, so there's a lot more where that came from, just subscribe if you haven't already. All right, so getting into the housekeeping, if you are new to the channel, I really strongly encourage you to subscribe to the channel because you'll never miss another video, and that way it helps support the channel, gets the word around of our positive Star Wars community, which you can be a part of. Simply just join the chat. When we go live, you guys can ask your questions of web. We might answer some if they are relative to the topic at hand, but it is good to have you guys jumping into the chat. And you could listen, of course, on audio form. Just search Outer Rim Transmission on any of the apps that you listen to podcasts on. So without further ado, we're going to get into this week's releases. Now, this week, we had the High Republic Adventures issue 11. And we also had the Battle of Jakku Insurgency Rising number 3. The High Republic Adventures, I talked about it. It's on the channel as a review. It's also on the weekly Tractor Beam live show where me and Matthew over on the Star Wars Underworld YouTube channel talk about the comics that came out that week of. But I showed this picture to you earlier today, Ben. So the big news in the Battle of Jakku is this is right after the events of the Return of the Jedi. And we were following Luke Skywalker around, Leia. What are they doing in between Return of the Jedi and the Battle of Jakku, which is basically like a year after? It's like the last battle of the Empire versus the New Republic and all that. So I showed you there's an Inquisitor that has entered the chat, if you will. They are on the Star Destroyer that Adelhard has rebel prisoners, and now Luke has also arrived on said Star Destroyer, looking like it's going to be an imminent battle. Now, I mean, it's a mysteriously cloaked Inquisitor that the face is not revealed. I pose this crazy off-the-wall question to you saying, what if this just happens to be either A, Mara Jade herself, or maybe like Lucasfilm and Disney's like analogous version of her? What would you think about that?
Well, all right. So I think there's a couple avenues. I had my first initial reaction in our chat. And also I do. All right. So I think when it comes to Mara Jade, her character would have to be executed like 100% perfectly for starters, just for like, people that have followed the character for years. Her character, I mean, is synonymous with, Star Wars Legends. Like, her character is her and Thrawn are right there as like the biggest Star Wars Legends icons, in my opinion, like just in my estimation. So, to bring in a character like that, it's a lot of pressure on Disney and like Star Wars and everybody involved, because the thing is, we've seen them fumble normal legacy characters like Luke, Boba, so on and so on. So it's kind of a weird situation where it's like, yeah, I'd love to see her come into canon, be involved, etc. But we don't want to get into another situation. We don't want to get into another situation where it's like, oh, look what they did to Boba Fett. They turned him into what he became or whatever, or like look what they did to Luke, etc. We don't want that to like happen to Mara Jade, like the second biggest Legends character. So it's like, it's a tricky position because Lucasfilm, to be quite blunt, like they flat out like missed and missed some more basically. So it's like, on one hand, I don't want them to touch the character with like a 10-foot pole, but on the other hand, it's like it would be cool to get the character into canon, because then it would be, she could get involved in like the Mandoverse stuff, etc. So like, that's like taking a positive spin on it. And just like one more little positive thing, like they may have like messed up several legacy characters. Oh yeah, even Kenobi. How can I forget that show? But Kenobi is another example. So like,
I mean, I don't know. Wait, hold on a second. I gotta. How did they mess up Obi-Wan's character?
I just think the story messed up the character, I think, more than anything. Because it's like, I guess, actually, then again, I would blame that on the story more than... So, like, I guess, if I would use that example, then it's like, if we go and, like, do some story with Mara Jade, like, they might, like, kind of, like, jack her story up, like, kind of like they did with Kenobi or Book of Boba Fett, etc. So it's like, on that end, there's a lot of negatives in one category. But there is one little... The only bit of hope I have for a transition of a Legends character into canon is Thrawn, because in my opinion, I think they've transitioned Thrawn fairly well. Specifically, talking about on screen, anyways. Like, I feel like they've transitioned him really well from Legends to Clone War, to Rebels to the Mandoverse. I think they've done a good job of that character. So I would have hope in that regard. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. It just, to me, it really comes down to who's involved, what the story is, and like, obviously they would have to make some alterations to some of the bits of the character, obviously. But it's just, do you have like the core foundation principles with the character there? Because like, sure, you can make the argument, well, she's not in canon, so none of that matters. But it matters because then why would you bring the character from Legends anyways to like completely gut the story? You might as well at that point make a new character. So I don't know. I'm on the fence when it comes to that, but it was a cool it is a cool idea though that you brought to my attention, and I guess the Inquisitors could be kind of like, you know what I mean, Chris? Like they could be kind of the pseudo Emperor's Hand thing of canon, like because in Legends there was like the different Emperor's Hands, like Mara and other characters were the Emperor's Hand throughout that time period. So maybe the Inquisitors could be kind of like Disney's version of that.
What's going on? So that's kind of a good little transition to ask you this question, Milton. So in one of the comics Chris was just talking about, there's like an Inquisitor that came up basically post Return of the Jedi, and it's a female character from the looks of it. Mm-hmm.
And Chris just posed the question, I'm sure you've seen it in our group chat, could that potentially end up being Mara Jade? And like for me, basically my concerns was they fumbled some legacy characters before, but then on the positive side, it's like they did do Thrawn really well in my opinion. So it's like, what would be kind of your take on bringing arguably the biggest Legends character, Mara Jade, into canon? Could Star Wars and Disney do it without overthinking it and getting too cute with it, or do you think they should just kind of leave that character as is?
I mean, look, realistically, it's not difficult to. It's difficult to overthink it if you're Disney. That's what they do. No disrespect. It's what they do. However, it's a beloved character that we all love, and it shouldn't be overthought. It should be very simple. I believe that George Lucas, or I wouldn't even say George Lucas. I would say the authors who did the pre-Legends things, they introduced that character in a way that was organic. It was appropriate. It felt like she belonged in that world. So to introduce her in a way that seems super forced or unfamiliar, it just wouldn't work for me. Now, obviously, if they write her to a point where like she's consistent to what she was before, then sure, I'd be okay with it. However, I feel that knowing how this regime of Star Wars tries to make their imprint on a character, I can see them overdoing it and screwing her up.
Yeah, those are kind of my concerns as well. So it's just a fine line. And they do have Timothy Zahn at least still there, so like they have him.
And here's what's funny. I was about to say, you got all these great authors and writers who, again, prior to Disney, wrote Star Wars and they did them well. You got John Jackson Miller's, the Timothy Zahns, You know, who I can go on and on. You know, James Luceno, like it's like these writers understand Star Wars. They understood what George's world was, and they understood if we're going to bring in a new character, we're going to make them feel organic. We're going to make them feel like they were already a part of, you know, whether it's the prequel series, the original trilogy, whatever. Like they were within that world. We just didn't hear about them because they were focused on doing something else. Like how they introduced Mara Jade into the original trilogy characters, organically done beautifully because they made her part of Palpatine's regime, but he was so focused on serving his individual needs where he's like, okay, I now need you to interact with like Luke and Leia, and this is the way you're going to do it. And it worked out perfectly. That's why she's a beloved character. And look, she still lives on to this day, and we've never seen her on the screen yet.
Yep.
Yeah, so here's the thing with Mara Jade. Doesn't there's like a viral video of George Lucas like going off on somebody in a boardroom where he's like, get the heck out of here because this guy walked in with like a treatment for Mara Jade. He's like, I freaking hate this character. Whoa. Get out of here. Like
that Seth Green when they did Robot Chicken, that was a skit for that show, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, because George was always on Robot Chicken.
Yes, he was on Robot Chicken. So Seth Green like did a skit with him, and go back and watch it. You can see it's clearly a skit because he's like, the guy's like, George, you know, so how about Mara Jade? And he's like, I didn't create Mara Jade. He's like, and last of it, and you're out, or whatever he does. And it's like so funny that people believe that was true. And it's like
I actually believed it after all these years.
Yes,
I'd seen it out of context. It was just like on Twitter, and I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, and it's funny just because, like, I think thinking about these characters, and again, these authors, they have these authors that wrote these books 20 years ago are still around making content, whether it's for Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, DC, Marvel. Like, they're still making stories, and they can still reach out to these writers and say, hey, why don't you come on board and help introduce these characters into, like, animation or live action? They know how to do it. And here's a great example. John Jackson Miller. He wrote New Dawn. I know that's Chris's one of her books. He wrote Kenobi.
He wrote The Living Force.
Right. I just listened. This is a different property, but this is why I'm bringing this up.
Oh, the Batman
book.
Is it good?
I just finished it literally this week. Batman Resurrection. So good by John Jackson Miller. He understands that iconic 1989 movie. He writes those characters to the point where it's like, oh my God, I need to see this on the screen because it organically fits. He understands Jack Napier. He understands Bruce Wayne, Alfred, Vicky Vale, Alex Knox. You know, he understands like all those characters that was in that 89 movie and how to transition them on the page. But also, hey, here's a true sequel to that movie. And again, he's a Star Wars writer as well. So it's like, that's your example. Go use him to help tell this story of Mara Jade or whomever.
It's crazy. I actually was at a panel with John Jackson Miller 2 weekends ago, and it was great because the panel was basically exactly like you're talking about, man. The panel was about authors that adapt existing IP. They adapt or they work in the constraints of the Batman universe, Star Wars, Marvel. So it was him. It was Stephen Barnes, who just wrote The Glass Abyss, which I really enjoyed that novel. I have a review on the channel now, Mace Windu novel. So it was like these three authors, and they were literally talking about like how do we navigate around canon and going in and out. And it was a great conversation. It actually was like it felt like almost like a college course. Like I was just sitting there absorbing all of this rich information of these veteran authors of how they go about doing it. Because you're right, Milton. This guy, he's been around the block. He wrote the Old Republic comics, which I have yet to read. But yeah, I mean, here's the other thing. Now, Ben, this goes for you, Milton, as well. You know, the characterization of Luke in The Last Jedi. It's not everybody's favorite. We know that. But what if more fuel to the fire for his depression and his exile? What happens if Mara Jade was in the story earlier and she died tragically? And that was another reason why he became depressed and went out. I think they could retroactively make Luke a better character, or at least make it easier for people to understand what the heck is happening in that movie, with another thing to add to the list.
Okay, so in the Last Jedi novelization, even though I didn't like that movie, I still listened to the book, and I believe in the beginning of the book he's having like a dream of like
Oh
an alternative
yeah,
or
Yep.
whatever,
I remember
and
that.
they're pretty much they are insinuating that he was with someone, like he had a wife or whatnot, and that's why he was envisioning that. And I think pretty much people are thinking, oh, that was Mara Jade. So here's my thing though: if they made a novelization of a book that's supposed to be canon, why wouldn't they even not reference that or insinuate in the movie? So I'm thinking there had to have been someone that Luke was involved with in the canon universe. He just never talk about it in the movies.
Yep. Yeah, I think they could do that in a way. They'd have to, obviously do it in a creative way because it just to me I feel like with Star Wars, we just got to get a lot of wins under our belt to like get to these sorts of stories to like kind of like fix broken things like, Clone Wars really helped the prequels to a degree. The Mandoverse probably is going to end up helping the sequels to some extent, I would say, and so on and so on. So like, a potential like Mara and Luke thing could help fix and justify his character like a bit more during The Last Jedi because, like Christian Harloff's always talked about this, like the way you fix Luke to a degree in The Last Jedi is what you have to do between 6 and 7 is pretty much just build up Luke to like pretty much like the god tier level he was kind of like in Legends and things, like make Luke this like unstoppable force great Jedi, make him, Luke talks about being the legend Luke Skywalker or whatever in The Last Jedi, etc. Like make him be that character during this timeline, make him be this amazing character, and then make him, have Mara Jade, etc. And then knock him off the perch. And basically, like, that's how you, like, break a character like that. Like, get their pride and ego and everything so high that, they're, like, unstoppable. Kind of like Anakin, I guess, during the Clone Wars. And then they get knocked off their perch. So, like, I think you could do that with her. It just comes down to the story. That's the big thing. And, like, we just got to I think we got to get a few wins under our belts. Because I'm not going to lie. If they just announce, like, a Mara Jade story, I would go into it with very, very skeptical glasses because of, they haven't showed us a lot of, a lot of consistency on their storytelling in terms of like good quality storytelling for characters that are beloved. So, I don't like to go negative, but that is a major concern. But I would give it a chance.
Yeah, well, there you go. The new issue comes out this week. So maybe the identity will be revealed of this character, and it'll be just it'll be the 13th sister or something, something like that. But hey, again, you don't ever mask somebody if you don't have a reveal of some degree. So the jury's still out on that. So the second big story, we're going to leave the Skeleton Crew for the end of this, but a really cool and surprising story is we got the announcement of a brand new ongoing Kylo Ren story that takes place between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So kind of tying into our little discussion here. It's called The Legacy of Vader. So this is pretty interesting. This is Marvel has announced already at New York Comic Con. If you weren't already aware, there's a Jedi Knights ongoing series, which is pre-Phantom Menace with all of our favorite Jedi. It's got a tie-in with Qui-Gon through all these different anthology. Each issue is focused on two different Jedi working together pre-Phantom Menace, and they're tied together with some kind of loose plot with Qui-Gon Jinn. So we got that going on, and then all the way at the other end of the timeline is we have this Kylo Ren story, and it's a very cool thing because Charles Soule's writing it. Luke Ross is doing the artwork, which is he's a fantastic, consistent Marvel Star Wars author or writer. Artist. But as far as the story, like Charles Soule's putting it, like Kylo Ren had just slain Snoke. He had just killed his father. He almost killed his mother and decided not to. He's got this thing going on for this scavenger Jedi or whatever. It's like there's a lot going on. So this is going to be a very interesting book because, there's a year between these two movies, and he was Supreme Leader. So what does that look like? Because we pick it up in Rise of Skywalker, and he's there on Mustafar getting the Wayfinder. So this is also going to be like Shadow of the Sith, that Adam Christopher wrote that book, where this is going to retroactively try to enhance and smooth out the rough edges on the sequel trilogy as a whole. Because it's kind of strange how Kylo was like, yeah, forget about the mask in Last Jedi. Then he puts the mask back on. Now he's obsessed with Vader again. So it's going to be interesting. But do you have any thoughts on this, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's just more like retroactively like fixing things. Like, like I mentioned with the Mara idea, with, the Mandoverse stuff. This is just like another example of that, really, because, they did that. JJ pretty much reversed all of Ryan's decisions in episode 9 from episode 8. So I think, them adding this into the story is pretty much, kind of building that bridge to fix JJ fixing Ryan's decision. Now we have someone else kind of fixing JJ's decision. But yeah, like I don't mind it, like, just because it just enhances the story a little more, and it can like add more value and context. Like, even though I'm not the biggest fan of those movies, it just adds more value and context to the story, which is nice. So it's not just jarring, because if you watch the story straight away, it's like, wait, what's going on here? Like you said, you go from not wanting the mask to like wanting the mask. Like, so it's cool just seeing them kind of like smooth out those edges.
Oh yeah. What about you, Milton? Would you read something like this down the line eventually? Have any interest in a Kylo Ren centered story like this?
Yeah, I mean, look, but to answer your question, yes. I think this is good to always try to expand out the lore. However, this is what we said. Not everyone's read all the properties. So if you're going to tell a solid story, make sure your movies make sense, and then if you want to expand it out, then use this platform to expand on characters, to make them more interconnected. You know what I'm saying? Be more intimate with them. This is where, I get kind of frustrated, because Colin Trevorrow's script was going to out some of this. You know what I'm saying? So, like, to me, it's like, why would you make this move when you had the opportunity to have Colin Trevorrow tell some of this in the third movie of the trilogy? You know what I'm saying? So it's like, that's what frustrates me. But yeah. I'm totally, like, I first jumped on the podcast talking about the Batman Resurrection book. I'm fine with these type of things. I think it's always good to try to expand the property. However, like, do it right the first time. Like, there's no need to try to retrospect it, but obviously that's what they're doing. And I think I don't know if it's Ben or Chris saying it, but it's kind of like the whole Luke thing. Now, like, you need to try to fix him to make him somewhat likable in the movies. And it's like, you shouldn't even have to do that, but it is what it is.
Yeah. That's the sequel trilogy. We're trying to fix it. I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm just happy that they're actually doing something with the sequel trilogy, because it seems like that was something that they were clearly staying away from for several years now. They just purposely were like, let's just not even go there anytime soon. Let's go to the High Republic. Let's go here. Just stay clear away from that, because that's like volatile room for the fans. So this is our first step kind of back into that era.
Yeah, just to add one more thing on that. Like, that's one good thing I can give Star Wars and Lucasfilm props on. Like, I can be very critical on a lot of the decisions they make initially, but at least this is showing they're aware of people's critiques and issues with the sequels. Because, if it would have been, just kind of how Star Wars, just kind of how a lot of the public-facing people were, years ago when these movies were getting put out, they would have, like, probably doubled down on a lot of these things. But it's nice to see them kind of, like, basically maturing and, like, being like, okay, like, we can actually take some feedback. Us taking criticism isn't the fans attacking us. It's like, they're actually just giving criticism on our creative project. So it's nice that Star Wars is actually being aware about it and addressing some of those issues where it's like, hey, this doesn't make sense between X and Y, so why not we just fill in the gap and, like, just make it a little bit better at least.
Oh yeah, so that is coming out at the beginning of February. So very cool stuff there as the Battle of Jakku marches on till I think the end of January. So good transition there. All right, this is our main topic. We got this trailer a lot sooner than I imagined. This came to us on a Friday afternoon as I was hurriedly getting ready for work, and then Ben was like, "Oh, there's a new trailer." I'm like, "Oh, crap!" So I had to watch that real quick while I was home. I want to get your first reaction from Milton. First of all, have you watched the trailer for Skeleton Crew?
I have not seen it yet.
All right, so this is going to be interesting because I have a bunch of screenshots. So we're going to get to see what your reaction might be, not by looking at the trailer, but by watching little screenshots. So this is going to be fun. But Ben, what was your thoughts? I know you've seen a trailer.
Yeah, for me, I watched it a few times. Watched it on my phone and then watched it on the TV as well. For me, I think the trailer makes the good thing is it makes me more excited for the show from where I was before. Just because, like, it gives you a bit more of the story, more of the vibes. It's more of this, like, lighthearted adventure vibes. Also, side note, Chris, if you notice, there's, like, a tagline I've seen posted a few different places where it says a Star Wars adventure instead of a Star Wars story. So that's interesting to keep in mind about the show. So it's just, like, to me, it makes me feel like this show is going to be more isolated and more of just, like, a fun adventure with these characters, and like that's kind of the vibes you get from this trailer, especially the music. The music, like this show, if it wasn't for the graphics, I would like think this was coming straight from like the 80s or something. Like I really believe that just based on like the shots, the music selection, just everything. Like it feels like Star Wars from the 80s, which makes me excited because it's like, all right, let's see what they can do. There's all this chatter of them wanting to lean into that Amblin 80s Goonies feel, whatever. Like, let's see if Star Wars can step up to the plate and do it.
Yeah, this was a show that I was decently excited, but when I see the trailer, I don't know why my hype went down. I seen the trailer, and I think it was part of like the goofy music to it all. I mean, because then apparently people were telling me, "Oh, this is sorry if I'm not a kid from the '80s, but this is one of the famous rock stars. I'm forgetting the name. He passed away.
It's a Peter Schilling song, Milton.
Okay,
Peter Schilling. I don't.
But yeah,
I thought it was somebody else. Oh, okay.
I think it was Peter Schilling. I think
David Bowie. Wait, wasn't it David Bowie?
Was it David Bowie? Oh wait. Never mind. I'm not sure, actually.
See, none of us have lived in those times, so it's hard for us to know for sure. But it's a remix version with Huttese of Major Tom or something like that, I think.
Yeah.
So anyway,
I do like that, though.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. Like, I've grown to like it a lot more in the subsequent viewings. I've watched it maybe 3 times now. But that first viewing was kind of whiplash for me because it just gave off. Now it looks okay, but I still had like this Disney Channel cheesiness to it, and I think a lot of that is unfortunately due to the alien character of Neil. I wish they had done something better with his eyes. I've come to the realization that it's his eyes that just make him look way too goofy and not like up to par with Star Wars. It looks like it's from something trying to be like Star Wars because it's looking like too animated for live action, and I hate to use this, but it looks too juvenile for this series. I think it just if he didn't have sclera, like the white in his eyes, if he was just like pure black eyes like Max Rebo, I would have been fine with it. It's just the way his expressions with those big bulging eyes. It's like, is he an anime character? Is he what is it? It just, he feels out of place, and then that throws off my whole. I mean, this could obviously change when I actually watched the show, the first episode, but the way he was showcased in the trailer just looked like too goofy for me. I don't know. I know it's such a nitpick. I get it, but it did like add to that. Oh, is this something that was like on Disney Channel vibe? And that's not something I wanted to feel out of Star Wars, to the point where I was like, is this really Star Wars? you know. So I had that like
Yeah.
existential kind of like, is this Star Wars a Star Wars adventure? I don't know.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, that's my that's my feeling week to week watching Andor. So I get it. But but yeah, no. I think when it comes to costume design, it's always like interesting with like whether they lean into practicals. Like it's always like one or the other with Star Wars. It's like they lean into practical, they lean into CGI, or they try to do some like weird blend or something. I do think though the thing is like setting the characters look aside at least. I think the interesting thing that's going to be with them is like just how they use like the potential like comedic timings and things. Like we see in the trailer when they're like handing off the controls, they're like the one kid's like Neil, and like that whole little exchange. I think it's gonna because they're gonna really try to capture that creature buddy thing like Grogu, etc. So I'm interested to see if the character takes off in that regard. You just can't really tell what characters will take off or won't take off in Star Wars with people.
Speaking of characters, we're gonna just get into our breakdowns because I also will admit this is probably the longest it's taken me to memorize Star Wars characters' names. I'll be honest with you guys. I don't know if it's just like there's just too much in this brain of mine when it comes to Star Wars at this point. I've hit like the overload level. But I had to bring up the StarWars.com article as we're talking to identify these characters because I only know one, and that's Neil because, well, he's made an impression, whether it's negative or positive. But this looks like this first image. This looks like, I believe this is the character of Fern, played by Ryan Kiera Armstrong. Or am I wrong with that? We're gonna call her Fern. But
yeah, we have to learn the names, folks. It's the show still has a month to come out, so give us some slack.
Yeah, it would appear that way. So I like the setup here. I will say, like, this is the official trailer. We had a teaser trailer before, and this is a trailer. The official trailers are supposed to give you the story, and that it did in spades. I feel like it did a great setup for those first two episodes. I mean, we know, right? Like 90% of a trailer is usually from the first 2 or 3 episodes, and very much seem that way. These kids in this image, they're stuck in detention, and then the father comes in and is like, "You're in trouble. What did you get into?" And it's got these cool flashbacks, like she's joyriding on a speeder bike through a highway tunnel, and then he's over there finding some long abandoned Sith tomb or whatever the heck he found. So I do like that setup, right? This is a Star Wars story that is for the first time taking us to like the actual like lifestyle of a kid in a galaxy far, far away. And that's another thing to be said entirely as well, right? Like, has Star Wars gone too far with trying to ground itself in reality where it is fantasy? Like, is it too much to see kids in detention? Is it too much to see school buses? Is it too much to see these houses that look like suburbia? What do you think about that, Milton? Do you feel like there's a slippery slope with the way Star Wars has been with Andor, seeing like domiciles of people, like everyday people, and now we're seeing kids going to school? Like, what do you think about that?
I think it's a balance. I mean, you have to know how to use it appropriately. Now, it's like what was it? I think it was The Last Jedi when they were doing like your mother joke, like in the beginning of that movie, whenever doing the Hux thing or whatever, and it's like that's too much. I'm like, don't bring real life like that, like into that type of a property. Now again, I haven't seen the trailer, so I have to see it later to get a better interpretation. But if it's something to where it feels like I could live there, then no. Like, that's not going to really work for me. I think you need to really make it fantasy, make it feel like a world or a different distant universe, a place that I've never been to. Obviously, make it familiar, but don't make it feel like, I can actually go there, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it's a good thing to feel like this could be in your backyard, or you're playing in your backyard with Star Wars, but there is definitely a bridge too far sometimes. So as we're looking here, this is Neil looking at this door. I will say, I do like how they are using their ear up against that. Like, oh, that's a characteristic of, it's apparently confirmed that this is not an Ortolan. Ortolans are the species of Max Rebo, because that'd be hugely crazy if he was, because Ortolans don't have arms or hands. But I think it could be the species that was in the Young Jedi Adventures kids series on Disney. They have it's got to be one of them. I'm pretty sure. So I like that. I now see with this screenshot, it doesn't bother me all that much because you can see the white of his eye, but maybe it's the animation. By the way, Ben, do we know if he's animatronic? Like, is there a kid in a suit and there's like, is it animatronic or is this CGI? Because if it is CGI, it's done very well.
I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not sure. The production and all this stuff was such a tight production. There wasn't many leaks, so I'm really unclear on the behind the scenes stuff on this show.
Yeah, it's quite interesting. Here is their ship. So the interesting thing, I really do like how they're setting up the story, I will say, because the kids find this tomb or something, and then they just get in a ship and it just takes off. It's a really cool adventure. I like the design of the ship. It does from the back angle. It almost looks like a U-wing from Rogue One, a Star Wars story. But it's got that sleekness to it. It could be from the Old Republic, maybe, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But so far, I like the design.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a cool design, and it's kind of that. God, I've seen that type of thing before. Like, you've seen it in movies before where you'll have characters like they'll stumble into like a vehicle, press a button, and then everything comes to life, and like, stuff happens. And I feel like that could be happening with this whole sequence here.
Yeah, so this shot here, we see an entire the cockpit of the ship, which you can buy in Lego form because I've seen it in person. Again, forget the name. Don't at me. I'm trying to figure this stuff out with you guys. But this looks like our principal crew here. I mean, and I'm going to ramble off the names again. We have the character of Wim, of Fern, of KB, and Neil. And there's also a droid. And this droid's name is SMEE. So deep cut Disney fans will put two and two together and know that is actually the character of Smee, or SM33. That's actually like, Star Wars version of Smee, which is the right hand man of Captain Hook from Peter Pan or something, right?
Yep.
So there you go. Like they are putting in cute little Easter eggs to certain things, and we're definitely going to make a lot of callbacks as we go throughout this breakdown, because there are certainly a lot of interesting coincidences or perfectly planned by Disney for lots of references in the show. So moving on. Now this gets me excited because look at the quality. I will say the quality of this show with the animation, the CGI, the sets look really good. I will say that because you're looking at their ship approaching like a pirate stronghold, and there's wreckage, there's derelict ships docked. It looks really grand. Like this is movie quality-esque animation and backdrops, which unfortunately these days it seems things don't always go as planned with these larger budgeted things these days. But yeah, would you this is going to be a pirate themed series, Milton. Is that something you would dig? Something based more on pirates?
I mean, yeah, because we've seen it in Star Wars already. We've seen Hondo and Hondo's crews and the bounty hunters are pirates. I mean, pretty much. And also with Disney, they actually don't. I mean, they do a good job with piracy with the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. I mean, so I really enjoy them. So I think if they take the best of what they've already done when it comes to how they utilize bounty hunters, utilize like pirate stories that are told within Disney or whatever, like you can make this work. And of course, I'll be interested in it for sure.
Oh yeah. something I like just as much are very dense crowd scenes in Star Wars. And that comes down to even the comic books. I love a good old splash page, double truck spread of just characters everywhere. This looks like something you would see in a Star Wars movie trailer, honestly. Like, just the hive of scum and villainy. Just there's so much detail. I'm looking forward, at this screen right now, because it's almost like a where's Waldo in Star Wars. There's hundreds of characters walking through this I would imagine is a pirate stronghold in this nebula somewhere. And we do know that they mentioned something about the synopsis of this series is the kids get lost in almost another the way they explain it, I don't know if they specifically say they're in another galaxy or something. Yeah, Ben, I know you want to chime in on this.
Yeah, because like it was, again, it could be, they could always change wording of like descriptions of things. They've done that before with other projects. I mean, they did that with Acolyte. So like, descriptions can change, but I know initially, months, it was probably like last year or something, there were, descriptions of the show, like it was like on Star Wars' website, and like other outlets like Hollywood Reporter and places like that, they were describing it as like, kids going on an adventure, like in, like they were pretty much describing it as another galaxy. So that's what got people thinking is like, oh, or is this going to be like maybe they don't directly bump into Ahsoka, obviously, but what if, see, because my thing I keep going back to is the tale between Balin and the witch, when they were talking about, when Balin was saying like, all the hazards going over to Peridia, etc. Like, what if the kid's adventure is taking place in this hazardous zone, that's dangerous? Like, maybe that's what's going to be happening here.
Oh my gosh.
That's kind of I mean, this is a Mandoverse show. Like, it is in the Mandoverse, so like, that's kind of where my thoughts are. Like, I don't think they go all the way to Peridia, but I really, if I had to put a buck on it right now, I would guess, I think their adventures could be taking place in that region.
That would be amazing if they could tie it together that way. A lot of potential there. Now, we were talking previously about Lucasfilm being hesitant on bringing in known characters of legend, such as my favorite Dash Rendar, your favorite Mara Jade, right? These characters that have been on the periphery for the fans, and that includes the Bothans. And that's not even Legends. Obviously, that was a name mentioned in Return of the Jedi. They were rampant throughout the Legends. Could this be our first Bothan? I know every time we see a horse-faced looking alien in Star Wars, whether it be comics, video games, series, movies, etc., there's always those posts about, is this a Bothan? Is this a Bothan? Now, I don't know if Bothans have 6 eyes like this thing, but this looks kind of closer to a horse face type of thing. But again, yeah. It's cool to see, even if it isn't, that's adding to the huge list of alien species in Star Wars. The one thing I will say, Ben, the one thing you have me on with Andor is they didn't have enough aliens. This show is doing this in spades.
Well, see, that's my thing, guys. Like, it's not even like Andor. I really think that's an issue with a lot of the Disney era properties. Like, like the sequels were kind of lacking on aliens. Like, you had some here and there, but it still just wasn't like the presence wasn't as felt as what we're even seeing from this trailer. Like, this trailer, it's like aliens like left and right, it feels like. So to me, like Andor barely showed it. I mean, Mando showed some aliens, but then again, it was just like a lot of Mando and Grogu and like humanoid type characters. So it's just like, it's nice seeing straight up aliens again, back in Star Wars. Like, bring aliens back. Like, that's something that should be happening more frequently than not. Like, that's, to me, like, that's the difference between having a fantasy show and a Star Wars show. A fantasy show, a lot of times, like, just generic sci-fi stuff, it's just a lot of humans and whatever. But like with Star Wars, you could have all these unique aliens.
Oh yeah. And we have a classic bar scene in Star Wars with this. But yeah, this is what I was hinting at before. So I was like, okay, that ship is very, very old. I mean, you look at SM-33, and he is an old looking droid, very old. And when I think it's Wim that offers the payment to this horse-faced maybe Bothan character, the guy is absolutely shocked when he's like, "Those are Old Republic credits."
Yep.
So now here's my thing, right? Because the Republic at this point would have been like 30 years ago, right? Because it's like 5 years after Return of the Jedi, then you figure another 5. Yeah, roughly like 30 years since Revenge of the Sith, which technically is 30 years enough time for them to say that's the Old Republic, with Palpatine and all as the Chancellor? Or are they actually talking about the Old Republic, which predates the High Republic? I mean, that's where my question lies, because I feel like sometimes the characters might, like, I don't know if he means like that was the Old Republic or like the era of the Old Republic. I don't know if either of you have any input on that. I mean, these look old. These things look old, these credits.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now, I mean, think about it this way. 30 years ago, for us, let's say 30, because I'm 37. Let's say 37 years ago was the Cold War or whatever. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not reference it in a way that's like 100 years ago. Now, if I'd have said, "Oh, that's the World War II era," then yeah, sure. But this was 30 years ago. They're going to say no. That was like, I don't know. That's weird. I need to watch it in context, but I don't know. As long as they make it make sense, I guess it's not a big deal. But I have to watch it and see it.
And here's
that's a good point. I don't know. Like you said, Milton. It's kind of like, you wouldn't reference something 30 years ago as the old whatever, or like the ancient times or anything. Like, so it just maybe they do give us a nice little Old Republic, just straight up connection, Chris.
And here's the thing, and I'll bring up Andor again. So in Andor, they went somewhere which I never expected. They mentioned the Rakatan Empire, who are part of the Old Republic, essentially, and that whole storyline in the comics. So that's pretty cool, because I was about to say, like, okay, this could literally be our first reference of the Old Republic. We know it exists. We know that. I was in the room in London when they announced all the different eras, including the new Jedi Order and Dawn of the Jedi and the Old Republic as a new era. The Old Republic was never seated in anything with the High Republic. They've mentioned a couple, like, oh, the Sith of old and stuff, but they never mentioned, like, oh, that was during the Old Republic. So we know we have James Mangold, who's been in the news recently, Ben, about him saying he's going to be starting writing his movie, like, as early as this new year coming up. So maybe this is now Lucasfilm's going to start to slowly seed in, like, yeah, there's this even older era than the High Republic. So that's just something to think about as somebody who's a major fan of that entire era.
Yeah, I mean, I'd love that. I'd love them to start seeding things in here and there. Like to me, it would be so cool, if Lucasfilm would do that. Like just imagine that, Chris. Like, if they have this, like, I know this is a lot to ask for Star Wars, so I know it probably is likely not going to happen. But like, what if they would just do a whole thing where it's like, you're seeding in stuff that's taking place, like, James Mangold's Old Republic movie, and then you seed in like stuff that slowly seeps into, like, Andor, they're referencing and learning from that war or whatever. And then you have this show connecting little bits and pieces here and there. And then it's like, boom, we get to the Rey movie and Rey's dealing with something connected clear back to the Old Republic or whatever. Like, I just wish they would do something like that where, it would feel more, I hate saying Marvel-esque, because Marvel kind of went off the rails here and there over the years, but like more Marvel-esque, where things are feeling where it's like, you can watch Iron Man and you can connect it to like this project way down the road. Like, I wish it was kind of more of a feel like that to a degree.
Yeah, you want to make it feel natural. You want to start inviting the era in, so it feels like it is a part of the history. And they did that really well in the lead up to the High Republic in the various comics at the time. They were being like, oh, that was a ship from the High Republic, and this was a character in a hologram that was Avar Kriss, apparently, that was talking to Kylo Ren or Luke Skywalker at the Jedi Temple when he was training Kylo Ren, or something like that. There's a lot of cool stuff like that. One thing that we'll never get away from, one species, telltale species, are Jawas. So Jawas are on this space station, wherever they are. So as a species that we thought was only on Tatooine, these things really get around. We've seen them a lot in Mandalorian, the off-world Jawas on whatever that planet was with Kuel and the lizard-looking things. So yeah, that's just another Star Wars staple.
Yeah, I mean, they're always up to no good.
This species here, again, I gotta give credit where credit is due. I like that there is so much of an emphasis yet again on practical effects, makeup, prosthetics, because I think this is a species that was developed for the High Republic, because I've seen this guy, or at least a species in maybe the High Republic Adventures or something. A blob looking really big dude here that is just looking like he's gonna be some trouble for our pals there of Skeleton Crew.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I love seeing like the practical effects and just getting back to it. Like it's nice, and like to me, I think that's the most charming part about this series is like just this whole adventure aspect, and just to see like what unique characters they run into really versus just like the normal standard human twirling a mustache bad guy.
And maybe a bad guy. We have Jude Law's character, and first off, I don't know if I've had the time on my own platform to talk about how much I just don't like this guy's name. And I might come off as being negative tonight, I get it. But could they have come up with a better name than Jod Nawood? It is such a mouthful. Like, I get it. Like, they're trying to, Star Warsify like a cool name, but like, I think that's just a bridge too far. It's too much of a mouthful. Maybe that name is going to be a cipher for his actual real name, because I feel like there's something behind this character, Milton. Because for context, this character finds the kids in trouble at the bar with that same horse-faced alien I was talking about earlier. He gives those kids trouble, and then Nawood is there to give him a ride. He's basically saying, "I'll help you kids get home." So, yeah.
Like, don't they mention something about like a Jedi? He's like, "I'm not a Jedi" or something, or no, he is a Jedi.
Well, something like at the end of the teaser trailer, he uses the Force to like grab a key because he's like behind a cell. He's in a cell and he like uses the Force, or maybe it's something else, to grab the keys.
But to go
yeah.
Name, it's like that's too much. I mean, they're doing too much. I mean, again, I'll have to go back and watch this tonight. You'll get my quote unquote my little mini review when I message you. But I mean, hopefully this character is something interesting. I mean, Jude Law is a really good actor, but I never would envision him being in Star Wars. I mean, I guess after seeing him in Captain Marvel, I guess now I can. But I don't know. I mean, I'm skeptical about his character because I feel like maybe he's too recognizable.
Okay.
For the, who knows?
Well,
interesting.
My thing with all this is, what this show's turning into, and I don't like to say this. Well, I actually, then again, I guess if it would go on this trajectory, it would be good. But like all these names, this is turning into me watching Game of Thrones for the first time, having to like write down names with faces because it's like, okay, I don't know who's who, what, where. Like I'm feeling like these names are a little tricky. Like, we're hardcore Star Wars fans and we're having a hard time keeping up with the names, much less like our relatives watching. Like, most likely at this point, like our relatives will be watching and they'll just be like, "Hey, that cute kid number one," or like little alien number one, or whatever. Like Neil's the only one I remember because it's a normal name. So it's just like, I don't know. I hope they use their names a little more frequently in the show, just so we can catch on early on, just to like really hammer these characters home.
Right.
But,
I mean, give the accolade credit. That were reasonable.
Yeah, I was able to get those pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh yeah, Acolyte did a really good job.
Oh yeah, well, here's Steve Urkel himself with his crew of pirates that are apparently going to be the antagonists, or are they? I feel like there's so much more to the story, as there should be, right? We shouldn't be just sitting here guessing everything, because that wouldn't be great writing if it was. Like, what's the fun of that? But like, again, what we're looking at are probably going to be the first 2 episodes. We're getting a 2-episode premiere on December 3rd, which is actually a month away, right? We're a whole month away. But yeah, you got a whole misfit crew of people in this band of merry pirates, which aren't in others that aren't in the trailer are the Wolfman guy and was his name, like Van or something, from The Mandalorian season 3, the Nikto guy.
Yep.
So there's a lot of antagonists there. Oh, what I was going with John Underwood is, see, I think his name has just become so ridiculous that that's the only reason why I'm remembering it now. But trying to say John Underwood really quickly is not the easiest thing. But I think there's an ulterior motive, and Alex, your buddy Alex in our chat, actually has a very good point. I want to give him a shout out. I 100% believe Jude Law's character is not a Jedi. He's just a pirate who's using the kids and tricking them to get what he wants, taking advantage because they are just kids. I definitely see that coming. I see that coming. He seems like way too much of a shady character to just like be a good Samaritan and just randomly help these kids. Like, he wants their ship. He knows probably something about the ship is like, there's a special compartment that holds like this vast treasure, and he's just going to use them to get it. You know, it's something like that. It's got to be.
Well, here's the question, guys. I mean, I guess we don't know all the characters, so it's really impossible to answer at this point. But who's the quote unquote Captain Hook of this whole thing? Because if we have like a Shmi or a Snee or whatever, you know, we have all these allusions to like Peter Pan. Who's the quote unquote Captain Hook? Is it like Jude Law's character? Like, would this, you know, maybe he lost his ship. Maybe. I don't know.
Oh, good. It's decent. Now, this image puts the wars in Star Wars, and there's actually kids with blasters, which honestly surprises me. The idea that we have Neil with a blaster rifle. It looks like we have Marines in the background with these helmets on. Like, it looks all out war in this image, which gets me excited because this is an adventure story first and probably less of an action story, as we're familiar with a lot of Star Wars these days. So I don't know. I think it's cool that we're going to see these kids wielding blasters. That's kind of cool. Oh
yeah, it's just cool seeing them like, you know, jump into the action like that and having to. No, I don't know. I just like the direction where it's going with some of this stuff. It's, to me, it's kind of like, you know, it's a new, refreshing take on Star Wars, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. So I've singled out this photo because it calls to mind, and I would keep going on Andor. Calls to mind those great scenes of Mon Mothma and her crazy freaking husband on Chandrila or Coruscant there, and it's got that same grounded reality of like, okay, our kids are in trouble. How do we get them back? And just getting into the minds of the parents and what the heck would be going through your mind if you had the vast galaxy and your kids are just stuck somewhere. You know, I just like the drama of it. So I do hope we get to really explore the parental characters and their reactions more.
Oh yeah, like the parental characters, like, you know, in Star Wars, they're always such a big part of things. Whether, I mean, just go back to the OT with Luke and the Lars family. I mean, I think they're going to be a big part in like pushing the characters in one direction or the other. Because like, here's another question too. Like, why are these kids getting pushed into an adventure? Like, there's something, you know, in Star Wars, it's, you know, the Lars family gets taken out. But in this one, is it like, you know, do you have a situation where it's like the parents are overwhelming parents or something, and like the kids, you know, because you see that in real life where you have parents that are really strict on kids and then the kids move away and whatever. It's like, is this going to be a situation where it's like the kids are, you know, in some sort of overwhelming situation with their parents, etc., and then it's like, boom, let's get out of here.
Oh yeah. So this is going to be where the adventure really kicks in. They're in the dark quarters. This is so Goonies, man. This is so Goonies, what they're going for. That Amblin, very good callback there, Ben. E.T., yep. There's very much Indiana Jones vibes I'll mention later on in the trailer. But this almost looks like it's like the Boar Gullet from Rogue One: A Star Wars Story, with this big tentacle creature in the dark depths of this cavern going to grab somebody. So you got to have those Star Wars creatures or it isn't Star Wars. So at least that is consistent. That is very Star Wars, okay? Here is a really cool image. Again, I think the art direction for this show is fantastic, whether it be derelict stations of ne'er-do-wells like pirates, or what could be, looks like this installation is built on like a frost-covered mountain, pretty ornate with this docking platform, and it looks like there's a battle breaking out. And this, Ben, is where it ties into our Mandalorian story, because clearly there is an X-Wing, and we've seen X-Wings in a previous teaser trailer, but just reaffirms the fact that yes, we are during the Age of Rebellion, or really after the Age of Rebellion, but we are in a timeline that is familiar to us. We're not completely separated, so that it doesn't feel like, not like Star Wars, so that's cool.
Oh yeah, always love to see an X-Wing, and it makes you think too with the kids being out on an adventure and the territory they're heading to. Are we gonna, bump into Carson Teva and he'd be like, "Hey, you're in a dangerous area. Your kids, yada yada yada," and then the kids are like, "Who cares what that adult says? Let's go." Yeah.
Carson Teva is gonna be the Nick Fury of the Mandoverse. He already kind of is, actually.
Pretty much.
This is a callback to Indiana Jones, right? They're actually SM33, I believe, is the one who's narrating, saying something about traps, and like you see the kids almost getting buzzed in half by this crazy laser that's just going through the wall at this point. So, just like Raiders of the Lost Ark. It's gonna be so good. It's gonna be so good. Here's a good image of SM33. I like how his one eye is just glowing. Again, very old looking droid. Definitely a unique model, whether he was made by somebody or just from a bygone era, which is most likely the case there. This is straight out of Goonies / Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, where we see the villain ripping the heart out of somebody's chest. I love the emphasis of the skull. So I think there is going to be a lot more to the name of Skeleton Crew than we think. There's a lot of skeleton iconography throughout this trailer, throughout the teaser trailer, the skulls. Is that like an ancient order, a cult order or something like that? The people of the skull, the Skeleton Crew. But I like how it's got that kind of weird vibe. But you look at this again, Ben, you mentioned it looks like it is straight out of the 80s. Yeah, they must have used the same kind of filming gear, sort of, or techniques that they used in the 80s. Because this definitely has that vibe. The ambiance is there, man.
Yeah, I mean, John Watts, he, that's the big reason I have faith in this show in general, is just mainly because of John Watts handling it all. Because, I feel like he's a very good filmmaker, of course, but it's like, they've talked so much about wanting to get that like Amblin vibe, that sort of thing. So it's like, to get that, almost mimic that look and get that look back, it's really cool, because nowadays it's like 2024. How often are you going to see that? Most of the time it's just like some overly shot CGI thing, and this show, it's looking like it's a better resolution show from the 80s, basically.
Oh yeah, most certainly. And last but not least, of course, we also have a nice poster here that came along with the trailer. We also got another poster that came out today. Not much on that one. It's just like the silhouette. It's a really cool It's a really cool poster. It's just the silhouette of the kids walking on an adventure. But yeah, this is if you look at the poster for Stranger Things, very much looks like a Stranger Things poster. And I know that was what the show was going for. When we heard the rumors, they were like, Lucasfilm is working on a skeleton, or working on a Stranger Things and Star Wars show kind of thing. And it's like, oh, okay. Well, this poster definitely depicts that. I mean, we got all the principal cast, not really any secrets in here, but I think it does a good job of just showing that this is an adventure. It even says a Star Wars adventure at the top. But you have the parents, you have Jar Jar in the wood, you got Wim, you got KB, you got Neil, you got the other kid that I can't remember the name. See, I gotta memorize these darn names, guys. Let's see. Fern. Okay, committing it to memory. But yeah, that is a trailer. So, any last thoughts on the trailer for Skeleton Crew, guys?
Well, obviously I haven't seen it, and like I said, I'll watch it eventually. But I mean, I think overall with what I've heard, what you guys talked about over the last couple months regarding the show when it was announced. I mean, I think this is something that could work. I think obviously there are concerns here or there with it, but I'm looking forward. We've always been we've always been show like we'll give stuff a chance when it comes to anything that's released. So I'm hopeful that this would expand the universe and bring in a different audience.
Yeah, it is good for them to bring in another audience, as you say, because I feel like Star Wars lately has not captured, and I might be completely wrong about this, but I just feel like less kids care about Star Wars than they did in our generation, in the 90s. Because there's a lot more out there, right? Like, you got Marvel, you got Minecraft, you got a whole bunch of other IP that are just battling for the kids' attention. But maybe this is that thing for those 12-year-olds, 13, 14-year-olds out there. This could be another entry point. Disney could be onto something here. If they can pull it off, this could really be really something cool for, like, my niece and nephew, for instance, which might be just about the age to watch something like this. And I could get them into Mandalorian and everything else. So it could be a brilliant move by Lucasfilm. Do you agree with that, Ben?
Yeah, I think with me, when it comes to this whole discussion, me and my buddy Alex, we've talked about it before. I think the issue with Star Wars, over these past few, pretty much since the Disney transition, if you think about it, guys, like, sequel trilogy, you're pretty much just trying to get people back on board with Star Wars again. Let's just try to do like a soft reboot, get vibes from the OT, whatever. Bring in the Luke, Han, bring in the original characters, etc. And then, after that, then you're having to like try to continue to like cater to that audience. So like, with Star Wars, they keep trying to like cater to the people that are like 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s versus the younger generation. I mean, look, Andor, that's definitely not a younger show. Acolyte, I would say that's definitely not a kid's show. Mandalorian, I mean, it has its moments. Like, Grogu's a kid-friendly property, but even at that, like, Mando, it's not really a kid, really accessible for kids and younger audiences. So, this is like the first time we've really been getting a thing harkening back to the OT, like when Luke first like went on his adventure and stuff. Since then, I mean, maybe since like Phantom Menace, I guess, with Anakin, but other than that, it's like we haven't really had a thing in this Disney era with where like a younger audience can have access to it. So like, I think this is a good step in the right direction, because I don't think Star Wars should only be Mando or Andor or whatever. Because if that's the case, then that means, like, pretty much we're basically making the argument Star Wars should be for people that are like 25 plus years old, which in my opinion is like completely wrong. So I like the direction where they're going with this, and I hope it succeeds, just because it'll like grow the fandom more, in which, that's something Star Wars really needs.
Oh yeah. Right now, like I was saying in chat, I was like, I don't know if this is the thing that's going to get the mainstream Star Wars fans to be like, oh, Star Wars is back, so to speak. I don't think it can do that, but I think Millen, you put it great. This is going to get a new audience, maybe, though, at least.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get to that point with Star Wars again for a while, just because, like, with Star Wars fans, it's like it's such like a divided mess on a lot of topics. So it's like, I think with Star Wars, it's like they just got to keep stacking wins. You know what I mean, Milton? It's kind of like the Eagles or our favorite sports teams. You got to keep stacking wins to get in the playoffs. Like, you got to get a win with Skeleton Crew, get a win with Andor, get a win with the whatever next animated show, get a win with the Mando movie. Like, they need like 4, 5, 6 wins in a row where it's just win, versus like, we go from Mando season 2 to like everything like falls off the rails with like Kenobi, Boba, Andor's viewership isn't great, like Acolyte's all over the map, and it's like they just need to stack some wins so they can get into like that playoff race and like that Super Bowl hunt, in our NFL terms, I guess I would say.
Yeah,
I
agree, and it's been another great show. It's great to return back with y'all for another episode of Outer Room Transmission. So we're going to have a good one because I actually had, for next week, I actually had an original idea. Not an original idea. This was a pretty easy thing. So they put out the making of like John Williams' music career and everything on Disney Plus, music by John Williams. I had taken a whole page of notes. I was ready to go on this podcast tonight, and we were going to do a deep dive into this really great documentary. And on the same day the documentary came out, that Friday, a couple hours later, they put out this trailer. So that kind of derailed us from that discussion. But we're going to do our best to at least give our first impressions maybe for next week on that. And maybe even a deeper discussion depending on any other news that comes out between now and then. Because, yeah, as I said, we are literally about 3 weeks away. Let's see. Yeah, we're about 3 weeks away from, about 4 weeks. Sorry, 4 weeks away from Skeleton Crew. So it's the road to Skeleton Crew starting now. So I'm sure we're going to maybe talk about some other stuff with the show, whether it be like little TV spots and things that might pop up that show us a little bit more, and maybe some actor interviews on the lead up, maybe some early reactions. So again, stay locked here on youtube.com/StarRaptor in the lead up to all of that more Star Wars excitement. Gentlemen, thanks for joining us. Thanks for joining me, as always. And where can people find you, starting with Milton?
You can find me on Twitter at Milton Weber 7 or Instagram at Milton 7. Or is it Milton Weber 7 on Twitter? And Instagram is Milton 7 Weber, I believe. Yeah. Follow me on those platforms. Sorry I jumped on late tonight again. Eagles had me with a heart attack, but it is what it is. So glad to be back. Hopefully you guys have a good week, and thank you for listening and watching.
Well said. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, you can find me talking Star Wars and fitness and sports and everything else in the world on Twitter and Instagram at RealBenMaynard.
And there you go. You can find me right here on YouTube, youtube.com/StarRaptor, breaking it down. I have a lot of cool stuff from New York Comic Con. I have a lot of reviews. There's been a lot of Star Wars content that's been coming out over the last month. So catch up on all of that from book reviews and magazine recaps and different things like that, from short stories and whatnot. And of course, said off the top, you can listen to us on any podcast app. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. But for the people in the chat, such as Chris and Alex, thanks for watching. May the Force be with you, and transmission.